Hello and welcome to the Say Yes Movement podcast with Heather and John, where we help you say yes to all the scary stuff, helping you with your professional and personal growth. Hey, everybody, welcome to the podcast and welcome, Heather. Happy Friday. How are you doing?
Happy Friday, John. I am doing good. But of course, like every Friday, it is Celebration Friday. I want to hear, what are you celebrating this week, John?
Oh, you know what? This week has been a great week. I have a week off like during semesters to kind of reset, refresh, and do all those great things. But this week, I just want to take a moment to just, you know, celebrate consistency, right? Because one of the
Ooh.
things I've been having in terms of conversations is just consistency. It's the little things that really make the difference. And what I've realized going into almost May now, like I'm almost a month away from my birthday. Whoa. I
Woohoo.
can't believe it's just around the corner. I know. Um, being consistent with all my activities, right? Being consistent with the meditation, with the workouts, with the work that I'm doing, and just being consistent with that and just being consistent with growth. Because one of the things I put on my list this year was to try to read a book a month. So I've got 2 books so far. So I've got some catching up, 3 books so far. So I got a little bit of catching up to do, but just being consistent. What about you? What are you celebrating today?
You know what? This week was a week of spending time with loved ones. And today we'll be
Mm,
spending time with loved ones later on. It's my niece's birthday today. So happy birthday, Amanda. But this week I had theater tickets to go see Les Miserables. And if anybody
mm,
has ever seen it, it's one of my favorites. It's a classic. And of course, it was date night with my hubby. So it was really good.
nice.
And sometimes we forget to put things on the calendar, and that's when they happen. So we have theater tickets, we go to all the shows, and it's just such a wonderful night to disconnect from the phone, from the computer, from the problems you're solving, and immerse yourself in creativity and beauty and song. And just, I'm mesmerized by just the talent that people have. So
Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed it. And I've been singing the songs all week in my head. And this morning I woke up and I was like singing them again. And my husband's like, I don't remember that song. I'm like, okay, let me play it for you. So maybe a Les Mis weekend, that's for sure.
Oh, I love it. Listen, years ago, Diane and I, we had theater tickets where we went, there was a show a month, I think, something like that,
Yeah.
right? And it's so nice just to break away from the routine, right? Like knowing that we had these tickets, we had to go, right? And they were always Sunday afternoon tickets, so they were great because it was a nice way to break up the weekend and kind of do our thing. But yeah, you know what? Just I think it's so important to break away from your day to day, right? Like we
Yeah.
we get so involved with what we do every single day. We get so involved in the minutia stuff that we forget that we have to just step back because sometimes it brings you fresh perspective and sometimes it opens things up in a way you never saw them before because it's like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah. You know what? Like as the tune is playing in your head, you're like, oh, yeah, maybe we can do this in this scenario today.
100%. And there's an observation that I have. When you go to the theater, when you go to a concert, when you go to see someone that's an artist, you're actually going to see them work. And you're
Mhm.
watching them and you're in awe of the talent that they're demonstrating, the ownership that they have of making an impact. And isn't that what leadership's all about? And as
Mm.
leaders, are we not also on display for being the best leader that we can? And so imagine that you're actually on stage if you are a people leader all the time. And are you making the best use of that moment on stage? And I think, John, in our career, we've coached lots of people that are sort of
Yeah.
waiting on the sidelines for someone to invite them onto the stage. And yet the stage is there for anyone to step on. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Yeah. No, listen, it's 100%, as I reflect back on my own career, the biggest pivots and moments that were and I know the same for you because I know I've heard bits and pieces of your story. So we'll get into that as well. But things started happening for us when we started making things happen,
Hmm.
right? There were things that we put into our control. There were things that we knew, like I knew, in terms of where I wanted to take my career, kind of climb the path. Like nothing happened until I made a decision that that's where I wanted to go next. And yes, the one thing I know I needed, and this is the one thing I coach on, is making sure you have your supporters and your sponsors, the people that can help you build your career, help you carve out the path. But none of that happens until you decide that that's what you want to do. And it's almost like you need to know what direction you're going in order for people to help nudge you in that direction, right? I think about Ironman, that I did last year, right? The reason I got to the finish line was because of the support I got from people who came out of the woodwork to say, "Hey, here are a couple of suggestions." I know I even sat with Patrick and I said, as a trainer, he used to be a trainer. He gave me some insights, and to this day, it was, I have to compliment him on giving me the tools that I needed to get to the finish line successfully, right?
Wow.
Because now that I knew where I wanted to go, people knew how to help me. And I think a lot of times we don't know where we want to go. We wait for people to tell us where to go. And then, it's like, well, then how come nobody's helping me get to where I want to be if I don't even know where I want to go myself? Right. And I know you've seen that, right? You've seen that in your own career, right?
I've seen that, and I've seen this syndrome where a job gets posted and then people apply and you've never heard them talk about that as a career path or a next step, and they feel this, well, either they feel obligation, like I must do that so that I look like I'm interested in career development, but it really doesn't match their values or where they want to go because they're unclear. And then there's other examples that I've seen where people don't get the job and they're like, but I'm ready. And then you ask them just a few more questions. What did you do to get ready? What do you do on a consistent day, every single day? That consistency piece. And they don't really have a strong answer. And I share this because sometimes we just think it's time. We put in our time, and time is not what's going to get you career. It's exactly what you said, taking action, being consistent, and having a place that you're going to go. I often tell people, don't get focused on the title, get focused on the value you're going to create in that next step in your career. And if you're clear on the value you're going to create, the job will show up.
Yeah, no, 100%. I remember, the conversation we had while you were pivoting. You were making a bit of a pivot in your career because you were stepping up into the next level when we first started talking. Because I think you had mentioned like, this is where I wanted to go. This is what I wanted to do. And I'm like, yeah, awesome, great. Like, how can I support you? Is there anything I could do, right? And then you stepped into it, and it's like, wow, you're here, right? Like, you finally got to where you wanted to be. But a lot of that came from, the work that you had put in. It's almost like you have to do the work of that person to become that person.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Right,
yes.
right. Because a lot of times people are waiting to say, well, I'll start doing that job when I start get compensated. I get compensated doing that work, right? When I get the promotion, I'll start acting like the manager or the senior manager or the director. And here's where I think there's a bit of a misconception, right? You have to show that you can do the work before you get the title. Or at least that's what I've seen in my career. And I'm not saying that people should be doing jobs they should be getting compensated for, but you will be recognized at some point. And and I'm going based off my own career, and I'm only sharing my personal examples, and you can kind of take this any way you like. But I was already doing the work of the person that I was becoming, right? Like when you think about stepping into your future self, I was already doing the future self work before the title showed up. And then the title showed up, and it's like, oh, but that seemed so easy for you. Well, it seemed easy because I was already doing the work, right? So one of the areas I've been coaching on is, within your own work today, how do you elevate yourself inside your portfolio? How do you add more things to your portfolio so you can start getting compensated for more?
100%.
That's
Especially if you're looking for an internal mobility type of role, you want people around you to see you as a leader, to see you as an influencer, to see you already in that next step and that role. And if they don't see you there, then that job promotion is probably not going to come your way. And that's what is the missing puzzle piece for often. People are like, well, I'll do that when I get the job. And no, and for anybody that's looking for an internal mobility, here's a secret tip. You're always in an interview. Every moment of every situation, you're being interviewed for, and you're stepping up and showing how you're going to behave in times of stress, in times of crisis, in times of really good times. And how are you going to lead and step up to being that true leader that you are and the best version of you? So if you're wondering why you're getting passed up for promotions, or why maybe your boss isn't taking you along for the ride, there's two things. Either you haven't communicated clearly what you're looking for and that next step, or you are not demonstrating the behaviors of that next level. And that's the first invitation I would have for you.
Yeah, no, listen, you touch on something so important there, right? Like demonstrating and showing the growth, right? Like you're right, we get measured, or at least what I saw is you get measured based on your worst moments. How do you react when things are falling apart around you, right? Because that's what's you're demonstrating. Like when things are great, things are great. But when things aren't great, what are you reverting to, right? And this is why I think personal development is crucial for everybody. A, to learn about yourself in terms of who you are, because what ends up happening is you have a default state. And this is one of the things that we know through neurolinguistic programming, NLP, is we all have a default home. And a default home is where we revert to when we get, into those really difficult, challenging situations. And if you start falling apart in those difficult situations, this is what you're demonstrating to people around you, right? The one thing I saw, and what's been interesting, the one thing I saw as a strength is when things are falling apart, I have an ability to step back and say, whoa, let's just take a second to figure out what we need to do next. Instead of rushing into the fire. Like there's no point rushing into a fire without a fire hose, right? Like you're just going to get burned. You need to know, like grab the hose first, then run into the fire, and then let's go put it out, right? Like just kind of using that analogy. And a lot of times people are just running in without the hose and they're getting burned, right? So take a step back and like, wait a minute, what can I do here? And, if you go through the situation and things don't go well, the next question you got to ask yourself is, what did I learn?
What I learned, yeah.
And if you didn't take the lesson away, then maybe you're not ready for the bigger things.
Yeah.
And that's what I've always seen is, you always get ready for the bigger things through the small things that you do consistently. Kind of going back to just consistency, right? Like, and that's the theme for today. Just having that consistency of how are you showing up every day? How are you interacting with the people around you? Are you somebody who's in constant conflict with somebody? Or are you somebody that gets along with everybody and knows how to collaborate? These are all things that we can demonstrate. Like you said, every day is an interview. And the beauty is you're inside the organization already. You already have, you're miles ahead of people that are on the outside trying to get in. You're already in. So now it's up to you. I use the analogy, especially with my students, is you all have an A. Your only job is to hold on to that A and demonstrate that that A is yours. And, the same for employees inside of an organization. You're a high-performing employee. Anything else is you demonstrating that you're not.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I love about that kind of mindset thinking. It's like, wait a minute. Okay. Yeah, I can contribute. I can bring value. And, there are things that I can do each and every day to make this better.
Well, I think the other piece with consistency is that we're not talking like do something for a month and then everyone's going to notice. You have to get consistent results. And I'm also not talking about doing extra work for years and years and years. If you're not being valued in your organization, it's probably an indication that you do need to think about what is next in your career. But the question that I think we've both asked our clients, John, is whose responsibility is it for your career and your next step? And oftentimes we hear people divert and blame it on their boss. And here's, a fact that I want everyone to hear loud and clear. If you have ever heard those words come out of your mouth, that my boss is not supporting me, that's your fault. And I say that with love because you have chosen to remain in that situation and you've chosen to not look for other options. Or also say to that person, here's what I need from you, and let them then decide whether they can give that to you or not. So we have to be responsible for what we need, what we want, and where we want to go. And if we hold 100% accountability, then we can also hold other to that same accountability and responsibility. But if we don't hold it for ourselves, then we can't expect others around us to do it. So, the question, whose responsibility is it for your career? It's you. It's absolutely you.
Yes, and I know that might sound like a tough pill to swallow, but it's so true. And we're evidence of that, right? When we take control of our careers and we take control of our growth, we take control of, where we want to go next, we are in control of that, right? And actually, it's been a big lesson for me, especially as an entrepreneur, trying to figure out, how do I get into this world? Like, I got to be in control of what I do. Otherwise, I'm in trouble because I got nobody to blame it on except me. I'm like my worst boss. I'm like, wait a minute.
You
It's
can't
like,
complain about the boss anymore, John.
yeah, I can't complain about the boss anymore because I'm it, right? But something beautiful happens when you do take control, right? You start to look at all the things that are within your realm of control. And, one of the areas that I've been focusing on with a lot of my clients is, what can you do today to take control of what you want to do next, right? Or who do you need to talk to? Who's that conversation? And when I say conversations, I'm not saying go out and ask people for jobs, right? Like, that's not what conversations or relationships are built on. And, and I think about us, I think about us a lot, actually, how we came to be where we are today. And it's because there was curiosity, right? I asked you about Steve Wozniak. Now, for those that don't know who Steve Wozniak, he's one of the co-founders of Apple. And I just add, like, my first conversation with you was, what was that interaction like with Steve Wozniak? And I remember you pulled out this little card that he gave you, and you were like beaming, like, look at this card and look how cool it is. It was just genuine interest in the other person, right?
That's right.
And I think about one of the things that we need to foster and really build on, and I think it's something that we kind of forgot over 3.5 years, is to build those relationships. And those relationships are built on trust. They're built on consistency. They're built on conversation. And it's not about taking, it's about more giving to the other side than receive, right? And because of that, here we are. I don't know, I forget. We're in the hundreds of episodes right now. But, we've done these conversations because we were offered, like, I remember walking into the room and, the first thing we had a conversation that was supposed to be 15 minutes. It lasted an hour and a half. And then you gave me a book on the way out, right? Like, there was always that value giving back and forth, right? Like, you told me I need to take a course. I took the course. I come back. This is what I learned. And, it was reciprocated back and forth. And you think about any relationship that you build inside of an organization today, you need to be giving more than you take. And going and doing an informational interview just to get a job, to say, hey, is there any openings in your department? Can I work with you guys? They're going to say, no. Thank you. No.
No. But there's another question you can ask instead, John. And the question that I will gladly answer is, what's it like to work where you are? Tell me about the culture. Tell me what you're most proud of. And, if you can get time on someone's calendar for 15 minutes and ask them 1 or 2 questions like that, you will now have enough information for the second conversation to even go deeper in those questions. But if you go right for, is there a job? I'm looking for a job. I don't know anything about you. I don't even know if we have shared values. And guess what? Culturally, I want to bring people on my team, or also be an advocate for people to come on the team that share the same values. So you have to establish and find what those shared values are. That's so, so important. And when people are looking for jobs or saying, oh, the market's really, really hard, I ask them, how many people did you connect with in the last 7 days? And they're like, oh, I sent out 50 resumes. I sent out 100 resumes. I'll tell you another hard fact, but truthful. If you're sending out resumes and thinking that's your only way that you're going to get a job, you're probably going to be unemployed for a while.
Yeah. 100%. Actually, it's one of the things I teach. It's one of the things I teach when it comes to career development, career transition. 50%. Actually, I think it's less than 50%. 40% of your job search is your resume. 60% is built on the connections and the network that you're building.
And if you don't have that network, you have to build it. You have to build it.
You got to build it. Nobody's going to come to you and say, well, actually, so it's been interesting because one of the things I've been sharing is once you do have a good connection with somebody and you understand their values, they will connect you with the person they think you need to connect with next. Right. And one of the things I've been doing in the conversations that I've been having with people is that, once you have an established rapport connection, ask them at the end of the informational session, which is all about them, not about you. Ask them, who else do you think I should connect with next? And
Great
having that
question.
warm referral, I call it chasing the white rabbit, right? For those that understand the matrix, you're chasing the white rabbit to see where it takes you. Because the truth is, if you're gonna get a referral for your next role, it's probably gonna be from somebody else's network, somebody you know,
That's
but
right.
their third network. They call it your third network connection. Those are the people most likely to hire you on. But it
Yes.
doesn't happen until you build that trust
And
first.
not until you declare what it is you're looking for. People don't
Yeah.
know how to help you till you declare that. So,
Yes.
John, here's the call to action for everyone. The question of the day is, who is responsible for your career advancement? And what is one thing that you can do to take responsibility in a bigger way than you have maybe the day before? And then what is that thing that you can do consistently week after week to really step into the true leader that you are, so that your brand is, I am ready for that next step? That would be the question that I would ask is, are you taking responsibility for your career, and what does that actually look like in terms of action? And if you need some time to journal about this, do that over the
Mhm.
weekend. But that is the question I think is going to be so powerful for your next step in your career.
Absolutely. So I want to leave it there because you said it so well, and a nice little call to action. Go back, reflect. Where can you add value? And I love that. I
Mm.
love that. I love that. All right. So thank you for listening to this episode of the Say Yes Movement podcast. Just remember, when you shift your mindset, you shift your life. Wishing you all a great one. Talk to you later. Take care, everybody.